Good. Great. So this is a call to order for the East Aurora Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, April 10th. If you all please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's see, may I have a motion to move into executive session to discuss the matters related to the employment history of 3 employees, matters protected by FERPA, and matters related to litigation.
So moved.
Second.
And we're going to add in the superintendent's evaluation. Can I get a motion with the addition?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? Yes. 5-0. Great. I'm going to call this meeting back into open session. We are returning from executive session where the board discussed matters relating to employment history of 3 employees, matters protected by FERPA, matters related to litigation, the superintendent's evaluation, and matters related to a particular approach. Oh, thank you so much. All right, item 4, do we have any agenda changes? No. What I'll point out is that in the Casey before that the consensus items indicate that it's 13 through 16, but it's actually 14 through 17 for the board's you can see that clearly here. All right, next is reports and discussion items part 1 if needed. We have nothing. Items requiring board action, nothing. And number 7, we're on to the superintendent's comments. Nothing at this time. Excellent. We are moving on right along to number 8, legislation. Thank you so much. And next is the board presidents and board members' comments and committee reports. So I'll start. I'm going to not touch on what I do want to talk about, which is a concert that I attended, because I don't want to steal anyone's thunder from the administration. I'll tag on to the end of their comments because it was super awesome. Dr. Improda.
Well, I'll go with that. I went to a couple concerts and enjoyed myself. So we'll let them talk about those. Those are wonderful. And I went to the Blitz at the high school that was sponsored by the high school science club and the science teachers. And it was engaging and educational, and it was an all-age affair. And I was really grateful for the opportunity to have a place to go with all different age kids. And then the other thing is the textbook committee met on March 18th to discuss 2 textbooks. I met with Mrs. O'Weiler and Mrs. Lyons and Mrs. Haley to go over 2 new textbooks to half-year courses, the sociology, real-world introduction, the most recent 2024 edition, as well as the psychology in modules 14th edition, also 2024 edition. Those 2 course textbooks had not been updated in quite a while. I don't know if I wrote down the date. It was like 2014 or something, but it was a while ago. And things have changed. So so it was a really nice opportunity to read some brand new textbooks. Although I didn't quite finish this one, but I did read. Then we at the end of it, we definitely recommended the books. The sociology book did a really good job of making it clear that there's no judgment, no opinion involved in the actual science of sociology that you are studying in order to learn the science, learn it as a science, and how to approach that. And they did a really good job of the study of human behavior. The psychology book does an excellent job of dividing things into little modules, not little, but into modules. So because it is a half-year course and a really thick book, the teacher can choose what they would like to discuss and what they have time for, but it's really interactive. It allows the student to be the scientist in many different ways. And also the approach as a science versus as any sort of opinion was great. And as well, it's so up to date. It includes the diagnostic manual, the most up-to-date psychiatric diagnostic manual, which is the first one that has the most up-to-date DSM-5. It is TR. So that was great. Those were really fun to review, and they did a really good job also of explaining to students where sometimes it's not as easy to understand the 1 + 1 = 2 of sociology and psychology. It did a really good job to explain all the phenomena that happen in the world and with ourselves as the difference between like something's related, it's correlated, versus something causes something else to happen. So both of them did a great job with correlation versus causation, which is necessary to understand.
Thank you so much. Mr. Flowers.
All I have is I'd like to get the internal audit committee, have a meeting soon on that. I'd like to work up the schedule with the superintendent and the audit committee and just figure out what our plan of attack will be moving forward. And having talked to the previous internal auditor, he made a suggestion that there might not be one this year on audit, and the state would certainly would accept the fact that for health reasons and stuff like that, it may not be practical. But I think we get a strategy at the next meeting and see how we want to handle it, or lighten the load for a smaller period of time. But is that okay to do that? I mean, I'm on board with that. Okay.
We've in the past filled that position by that process of discussing it in the committee and then making a recommendation to the board. So the purpose of that committee is to recommend to the board on various issues, so that we don't make any decisions. But the process is a good one because it helps the board to have a recommendation that we can support.
Thank you. Then the other thing is just a thank you to the superintendent and other people who work in the district, the principals and food service. We had our 5K race, the bunny hop, the Rotary does, our major fundraiser, and the school supports that in different ways. Just, thank you. Other than that, that's it.
Great. Thank you so much. Mrs. Daniel.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Munson.
I have nothing in particular, but I just wanted to respond to the textbook committee just a little bit here, based on your report. I'd like to sometime have a conversation with students about textbooks in general. That thing is like a brick, and it's a $227 brick. And from what I read on the description, they don't have the online support that you might expect. And so I'd really be curious to talk to students about their feeling about having a textbook that's a traditional old-fashioned one versus having online resources that are equivalent in nature. And it doesn't affect our decision tonight, but I just think it is a reminder to us that the decisions we make affect all those students. Yeah. So they gotta lug those things back and forth, and who knows
My understanding of these is that they do have some online activities that are available, but I don't believe, and would have to verify if it's the full textbook. I don't think so, but they have they have quizzes, they have different things like that are available online, and that these are classroom copies. So they stay in the classroom.
They don't go home.
They do not go home. Neither class will they go home. They'll be in the class because of the activity of the chapters, you know, like it's a 12-page module, so it's
Well, that's a
something
good
they'll do
answer.
in-
That's a good.
Yeah, it's something they'll do in class, working together, and then be able to create a whole lesson around that in class.
Thank you.
And I can, having accidentally picked up one of my kids back there, I can tell you that you're 100% spot on.
Yeah, right.
Okay, great. So we are through item 9. We're on to item 10, administrator comments. Do we have any administrators with a comment?
So speaking of what you guys had mentioned, last month we did have the honor of hosting our first district-wide band concert, and it was a great celebration of music in our schools month. I personally loved it because you got to see the entire scope of our band program, from our 4th graders at Parkdale all the way up through our seniors at the high school. I, for one, thought it was a wonderful performance from all of the bands that performed. And what I especially loved, even though it went a little late for the 4th graders, I loved that all of the students got to watch each of the bands play. So the 4th graders got to see what's to come. And I'm sure the older kids got to reflect back on, oh my goodness, that's where we were. So it was a really wonderful celebration and a very unique celebration, and I look forward to more of them each year. It was the first one, so it was wonderful.
Yeah, I'll say that everything you said is exactly what I was thinking as I sat there and what my wife and I talked about, and what a wonderful idea it was. And we understand it was the Parkdale music teacher who came up with it, and kudos to her for encouraging us to take that step. I remember, I think it was maybe just last year, where some of the high school students were playing with the middle school band, and I thought that was great. This blew that out of the water, and so yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I would agree, and I like the students were all able to sit together after they performed, and it was fun to watch each age group support the other age group. But when the elementary school students got up and they said, and this is a classic, hot cross buns, the high school students in their enthusiasm were not like, they were so excited, you know, like, so it was, and then the elementary students got excited, but I think also it's really important for parents to see, are really, you know, are they only gonna ever know 3 notes? No, they will.
Yeah.
And just in a year, they're gonna know so many more, and then as you see that whole progression, it helps formulate in the parents and the students' mind what to expect, because sometimes we don't know.
The 4th grade band started off with like, and this is how we started, and it was just like a mishmash of like, and then by the time we got to the seniors and the high school, it was just this ensemble, and that was a true representation of where we started to where we moved.
Yeah.
It was lovely.
It's great.
Anything else from our Parkdale friends?
If you would like to continue the music fun, May is the month where our kindergarten through our 3rd grade perform every Thursday, and they have their weekly concerts. And if you haven't been to one, they're just the most adorable experience that you can go to. So if you missed out on that concert, come and join us in May.
Excellent, excellent. But other administrators? Mr. Lombardo.
Athletics finally had some decent weather. We actually had spring sports are now up and going. 5 of our 6 varsity teams, or 5 varsity teams competed today or are about to start as we speak. One little bit of news is, in conjunction with the athletic advisory, we have a new set of booster guidelines for all of our athletic teams and programs that we're going to be kind of rolling out to all those booster presidents in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So.
Thank you.
I'll just quickly add, if you're looking for something to do, our annual badminton tournament is taking place this weekend. Hoping to get my picture on a plaque for the 2nd time in 23 years. And we have a music concert this week as well. And then the following weekend is our drama production. So 'tis the season of April, May, June. Exciting opportunities on stage.
Thank you so much.
So I'm here representing the middle school today because Mr. Brown got on a bus with about 45 middle schoolers this morning and drove the bus. So they're on the student council trip, and they left early this morning. Got there 2 o'clock, and they were right into their tours and walking around the city. So they'll be busy for the next few days. So stay tuned to our social media accounts, and we'll keep you updated on pictures and events of all the happenings out that way.
Excellent. I look forward to following that. Thank you so much. Any other administrators? No? Excellent.
May I ask, I was talking to a very nice gentleman at the senior center recently, and he asked if there was they would like to know what concerts they could go to and all of that, and I said, of course, they can look on the school website, but I didn't know if there was, he wanted a simple thing. He said that they had looked and it was, you know.
We could easily create that and make sure it's distributed. Right, going online is not always the easiest. So.
I would just recommend the district calendar has all.
Right.
So
Okay.
copies of that.
Right. Just print them out, the May district calendar.
We're moving on to item 11, which is our community member comments. The emails that we've received since the March 20th meeting, we received one email from Chris Miller regarding the CBD store, and my understanding is that President Armbrust spoke to him about that. So, next up is community comments. I just want to reiterate the information that's within our agenda. The community comment period is not intended to be a discussion with the board or a question and answer session. The Board of Education will listen to the remarks and may or may not respond directly to the speaker. Each speaker is given 3 minutes to address the board, and individuals who participate in visitor comment period will be must conduct themselves in a respectful manner. In the likely event that a meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. That's a paraphrasing the comments on there, but I felt that it's important to address, and anybody who wants to see the remainder of those, they can look at the agenda. Am I correct in seeing that we have one person signed up to speak, and that would be Mrs. Horning?
Thank you.
Mrs. Horning, welcome back. And she's going to be addressing us on the topic of March 6th.
First of all, I'm unafraid of admitting any errors upon my part. Due to my being interrupted, I misspoke a fact on March 6th. I stated that enrollment had decreased by 25% when it was actually about 13%. 2013 was 1,859 students, while 2023 was 1,629 students, a loss of enrollment in 10 years of 230 students. Good evening, Board of Education members. I was traveling during the March 20 board meeting, but tonight I will address conduct that I observed as harassing and intentionally demeaning directed toward me during the March 6 board meeting. My son was the 2023 men's basketball MVP for East Aurora. I appreciate the accolades due for achievement for these student athletes, but first and foremost, they are students first and athletes as a privilege. Last time I looked, asking questions, providing facts quoted from official documents, and stating an opinion are not disrespect, but what all good elected public servants should expect from the public. I asked multiple questions on March 6th, by the way. None were answered. My comments are permissible as free speech, and I follow visitors' comments policy. Additionally, I regularly provide you with supporting documents and links, which I distribute often in my handouts and often directly email. First, it is my understanding that these are meetings of the Board of Education, not of any employee of the board. My comments are made to the board. During these comments, limited by your strictly enforced 3 minutes restriction, I was interrupted by an employee who repeatedly accused me, without any supporting detail, of making statements that were not true and incorrect. Everything I've said, he claimed, is incorrect. Well, I am not a liar, and the documentation I presented is proof. Second, the language and tone were offensive to me. I was told that I was barking and was using a mishmash of facts and figures. I am not a dog, I don't bark. If my facts and figures don't add up, as was claimed, then provide respectful clarification so that I can stand corrected. In my opinion, the tone was officious, berating, and treating me as if I were a child. I am not a child. These offensive comments were made when the boardroom was packed with students, athletes, and parents present for a celebration of the team's success. The problem I see is that these students witnessed someone who is supposed to be a role model, but who demonstrated what bullying of a woman looks and sounds like. How can we hold students to dignity for all student standards when adults models bullying? Perhaps the accuser is upset because I uncovered his secret almost $10,000 raise. Perhaps the accuser is upset because I revealed that the state education commissioner reversed an inappropriate action toward a tenured teacher under education law. Perhaps the accuser is upset because I referenced the 2021 external audit report that labeled the excessive carryover of fund balance as a violation of state law. Perhaps the accuser is upset because I revealed a recent state controller's audit showing that the district did not consistently follow general municipal law. I will continue to avail myself of the privilege of making visitor comments, whether or not my questions receive answers. Thank you for listening.
We are moving on to number 12, reports and discussions. Discussion items part 2. Letter A is the business office operations financial reports. Mr. George.
Yes. Tonight I will be reporting on our financial reports as of the end of February. At our next board meeting, we will have another fund balance grid. Everything is in balance as of the end of February, and it ties to our cash flow. Our cash flow looks good to get us through the summer. As of the end of February, in our general fund, we had $13.3 million in the bank. 55% of our appropriated balance, appropriations were spent, and about 77% of our revenues were received. In the cafeteria fund, revenues are exceeding expenditures again, but I always caution, it could be a timing thing in the cafeteria fund, of about $83,000. Over break, the middle school freezer went down. We've submitted a insurance claim on that. Personal Touch was very helpful. They came in and they did all the inventory of the lost food. So we're working on that. In the federal fund, to the end of February, we had received $2.1 million, and we had spent 1.4. That looks wrong. I might have grabbed a wrong number. Oh no, $1.3 million. And our stimulus funding is on track to be fully spent within the statutory limits. In the capital fund, happy to report phase 1 started over break. And we were also able to work on the capital outlay at Parkdale over break. And we are on track with our expenditures and the use of our capital reserve funding to get to June before we ban for the remainder for part of the project. And that's all I had. Any questions?
The most recent sales tax, will that be reflected in the March report?
The end of March we got it, correct. And actually the sales tax, this is the first quarter of sales tax that has been under the previous year's quarter in a long time.
Yeah, Christmas and everything.
Yeah, in a long time. So it was a little bit under what it was last year for this quarter.
Thank you.
But it's still on track to be within what we budgeted?
Yes.
Any other questions for Mrs. George? Excellent. Thank you, Mrs. George.
You're welcome.
Moving on to letter B, the 2024-2025 budget workshop.
Okay, yeah, we've been working on it over the last several months, and we're getting very close. Unfortunately, we don't have so here's our agenda. This is what we'll be discussing at the meeting. Just to kind of go through where we were when we started back in the fall, what we dealt with over the last several months. Unfortunately, like I was saying, the state hasn't come up with a budget, so it makes it kind of challenging for us to pull things together. But we're really hopeful that within the next, we're hoping something might happen today. They said there's going to be a delay till Thursday and probably till next Tuesday, but we're hoping by next Tuesday something will actually be finalized. And so let's give this a second to boot up.
Sorry. The whole computer is locked up.
Well, there've been some good quotes in the media about the discussions between the governor and the legislature, which might lead one to believe that a solution is imminent and that it will be not as severe a situation for the districts as was included in the executive budget.
Yeah, it does
So I think that was a good thing.
Yeah, I think that, we talked about the hold harmless was the $180,000, which was a significant portion. Also the 3%, which was another $52,000. We're hopeful that that actually will go through, but we just have to, kind of wait and see. So that kind of makes it a bit of a challenge for us, but we'll work through it and figure it out. Again, everything that we do here, our budget is based on our values and visions, kind of the guiding force for us in terms of our program and our personnel. Here's our finance committee meetings. We just met on March 19th was the last meeting we had. Those have been very productive and really helpful in developing the agendas and the presentations for the budget process. Here's our per pupil expenditure again. We look at the numbers that we spent. For East Aurora, it's just a hair over $19,000. In Erie County, it's a little bit over $20,000, and across New York State, it's just about $26,000 per student. So the tax levy limit calculation here, we've discussed this for the last several months. You can see on the projected of 24-25, it's 4.28, and that's what we're intending to go out to the public. And so what we do know is we're hoping to restore all the safe, harmless foundation aid cuts, reject the inflation calculation foundation aid, which is a really important piece for not only us, but all school districts in the state. Really looking for that 3% foundation minimum increase. So we're kind of thinking about building that in. And we're also hoping that we might get some per pupil expenditure increase for pre-K, which has been underfunded for the last several years. And so that impacts not only our school district, but school districts across the state. Here's our reserve funding, and this is something we're going to have to probably talk about at the next meeting or the meeting after that. So idea of when we get to the end of the year, and if we have excess appropriations, where do we want to place those and what reserves? And so we've made some suggestions here, but again, that'll be a discussion for the board. How much we want to save in terms of moving forward. The governor's state aid runs again. Here it is. We're really hopeful that $180,000 at the top will be restored, and the other aid losses that are there were projected. Ms. George knew that many of those were coming just because of our usage of certain programs and resources. So our proposed revenues, here it is. You can see here the increase is about $1,258,000, or about 2.87% increase in terms of the revenue. The appropriations, here's where that gap came up, is about a $1.3 million increase of 2.9%. So here's where we are right now. We started off, I remember our gap was about $700,000 because we just were waiting for information to come back. Ms. George and her team did an excellent job of really bringing that down to our gap is just a hair over $46,000. The $52,000 increase of 3% would cover that amount. If that doesn't come through, we're going to recommend appropriating additional fund balance to cover it for this year.
I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
So the $52,000 is not currently in the budget as a revenue.
Correct.
Okay. And without it, we have a gap of $46,000. So if the $52,000 comes in, we have no gap.
Right.
Thank you.
So what state aid numbers are being used? The governor's proposal being used here?
The governor's proposal plus the $180,000 of restored foundation aid.
And on the appropriated fund balance, you've also increased the amount that was originally projected to cover 2/3 of the increase in transportation. That happened last time.
Yes.
But I think it's important to remember that that's a one-time expense and appropriately dealt with appropriated fund balance, since we are expecting a balance at the end of the year.
And then they give that back to us next year. A certain portion of that back to us next
It
year.
becomes a revenue next year. So we appropriate it this year as a $200,000 increase in the appropriated fund balance, but the following year, it becomes a state aid increase in the categorical aid for transportation.
So here's the one thing that's still out there is restoring the building level subs. And, we're working on looking at the budget and tightening it up. And we're really hopeful that we're going to be able to restore one or two of the subs. We'll know more about that in the next couple of weeks, and certainly before we finalize the budget. So we're really hopeful that will happen as well. It's going to take a little bit more time and just waiting for some additional information from the state. So the capital outlay next year will be replacement of masonry work at the high school. That's some of the brickwork that needs to be repaired, and that's $100,000. Proposition 1 will fill in that blank when we finally decide on the final number for the budget. And the second proposition is the use of the technology reserve, $75,000. And here we are, some things that we still need to think about. We're talking about maintaining the building level subs. And then the expectations, as I mentioned earlier, for surpluses. What are our expectations for funding and reserving, funding and using reserves, and what are our expectations for saving for the capital reserves. And so here we are, April 10th. It's getting close, so we're going to have to adopt the budget on the 24th, and so we're really hopeful that things will turn around and be positive for us. We talked a little bit about having an additional meeting if we believe it's necessary, so that would be next week on Tuesday, so we can discuss that if we believe it's necessary. I think, like I said, we're going to, if we don't get the $46,000, suggest to appropriate additional funding to cover that, so there isn't any cuts or changing programs or those types of things. So that's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Mr. West, just what additional information are we waiting for from the state with respect to the building subs issue? If the 180,000 is in the budget right now, we have the 52,000 out there. So what
Yeah,
would
so it
impact
depends
that?
if we would get additional aid from different categories. So that might influence the monies that we have available to apply to those positions. And then money's moved around. So like if we get additional pre-K funding, less comes out of the general fund, and that money can then be used to support the building levels.
So it all depends on the bottom line with regard to the printout of the, what do they call it, the budget?
Oh, the runs.
The runs, yes. Odd name for something, but so it all depends upon those runs if they get them to us in a timely manner. But we have to vote on this thing the third week in April, am I guessing?
The 24th.
24th of April. So one way or the other, we've got to vote on a balanced budget at that time, which means we have to have a plan for however it materializes between now and then. So you mentioned that we would use some appropriated fund balance increases in order to cover some of the additional needs, depending upon how those numbers in the runs materialize. Last time we asked if you could just take a peek at the budget with regard to one-time expenditures, because we all agreed that using appropriated fund balance to solve these problems makes sense only if it's for a one-time expenditure. So I'm wondering if there are some one-time expenditures in this budget that would appropriately be financed through use of excess appropriations from this year, and which would allow us then to balance the budget, including some things like the substitute teachers.
Yeah, so as Ms. George and the team in the business office look through those things, and that's how they brought it down to the 46,000. Are there additional items left in the budget? I guess there are. It's pretty.
It's pretty tight right now on the appropriation side.
Yes, yeah.
So you made some appropriations adjustments?
I did, and they're in your draft notes. Everything is outlined.
If the state aid, when it's settled, and it covers the expectation for the foundation aid, which you're expecting, and then it closes this gap to the next priority for the full-time subs that you talked about. Then after that, there probably won't be anything left, I wouldn't think, or anything. I mean, we couldn't address a tax cap issue at all at that point then.
I would doubt it.
I know I publicly said that we would have to go to the cap if there was no change from the governor's proposal, because you just couldn't put the budget together that way. But, so it's going to be too tight to even consider something like that then.
Yeah, I think
Here's that.
I think if we wanted to maintain
It'd be the priority above the tax part of it. Yeah, I'm okay, I understand that, yeah, it's just wanted to bring that up a little bit and talk about it, because it is out there. I mean, the tax cap's a big part of this, and I know early on, it was suggested even by me that we'd have to go to the tax cap, because there's just no way that we could support a cut in state aid. If the runs came in and they were surprisingly good, if it's a discussion we could have down the road. I just want to be able to open that discussion up, which I guess I just did.
Well, sure, because we just don't know what this is going to, how it's going to materialize. And if it materializes more than the 180 plus the 52, then I think we have some discussion to engage in.
Mr. Russ, just remind us, these state aid runs usually come out pretty quickly after the budget has been approved, correct?
Immediately.
It's like within a day?
Yes.
Okay. So we would have that information very quickly once it's, so we potentially could have it by next Tuesday if they have everything done on Monday.
Once the governor signs it,
Right, then
within hours,
That's
it's
right,
on
that's
online.
right. Yeah, that was my recollection.
So on that note, we had talked at the last meeting about extending our morning meeting on the 16th, at which we would be voting on on BOCES. We had talked about extending it to have further discussion if needed, right? If we were in the position we're in right now, where we still are unsure, we had talked about extending it for that. Do we still, are we going to hold on to that? And I guess when do we make the decision that we're going to do that? And when are we going to have the information?
Normally tonight. In every previous year, except the years when the budget has been delayed in Albany, that it has been this meeting when by the end of the meeting, we gave the superintendent and the business manager a number. And that's the budget. That is the balanced budget number. And we don't have that tonight, although we could create one tonight if you wanted to. But it's just subject to this additional change that we don't know about. We can still adopt a budget, and then if it's changes, we have to live with the changes. So it could mean more revenue, in which case you end up with an excess at the end of the year, or it could mean less revenue, in which case you have to make some cuts during the year. So it doesn't prevent us. We have to adopt a budget. Doesn't matter whether the state does anything. We have to adopt it by the 24th. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been positive thinking about the state aid. If it came in more, it's possible it'll go the other way too. And then we'll really be working hard that's why we against adopting tonight, because you would have that revenue booked and it's not going to be there. Then you've got any cuts after the budget's approved and stuff.
Right, well, so yeah, and we wouldn't adopt until the 24th.
We wouldn't have adopted it tonight anyway, but we would have given them the numbers so that they could get all the paperwork ready and everything would be ready to adopt it at the following meeting.
So I think based on the fact we're waiting for this information from Albany, we potentially may have the information, that's what they're saying, Thursday or next Monday.
Right.
It probably makes sense to extend that BOCES meeting so that we have the opportunity to have a discussion if we have the information. If there's no information, we have the meeting and say we have no information and the meeting's over.
I think that sounds fair. And Mrs. George, from your perspective, how does that look as far as getting the runs put together and plugged in and
I'm pretty confident with only a $46,000 gap that with information is changing every day. I even got information today that interest rates are being kicked out further. So that's another place that I can look at to increase interest. It changes every day.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to have to pull the trigger and make a decision. So I really think that we should probably leave the appropriation side of the budget as is. And like I said, even information from that has changed.
But if
I feel confident with the appropriation side of the budget that we should be able to get one building level sub, if not 1.5. But things change. So
if we want to keep the program of building level subs the same, which means one in each building, the appropriation side of the budget would have to be changed.
correct.
Okay. So I'm in favor of holding off on deciding what the bottom line should be on the appropriation side until we know, because I'm just guessing, but I think around the table there's a great deal of support for maintaining those positions.
I agree. So then I would ask the board to just be ready for an extended meeting on Tuesday morning so that we can hopefully, knock on wood, put this all to close and then vote on the 24th, knowing that we have all the information. Does anybody else have any questions or any topics for discussion around the budget with regards to the budget worksheet?
My questions were answered, and but I will say there's just so much work and information here. This benefit is a big help. I mean, some of the documents that we've received in draft form and following along with the budget process, either through our meetings or through these notes and stuff, has been helpful. Probably we've talked about here doesn't even put it down to the amount of time that we're going into. It's well thought out. I don't think there's any question about that. Assuming that the state were to come through a little bit, I'd like to have some of the discussions I brought up. But other than that, no, I think the sub is a high priority for everyone. I brought that up at a meeting. Everyone has. It's not just we all have. It's a high priority that those funds are available. It would be nice to see the numbers though, that the foundation aid is coming in what the superintendent expects. That's a key piece of this. And when I read through it, it sounds like it's going to, but until you actually have the governor approve it, she could drag this along as long as she wanted to. I've been in budgets that went till August before they did. I've been in June and July over my career and stuff, and nothing's a done deal until it's done. So Yogi said it's not over till it's over, and it's kind of like that, But that's all I have. Thank you.
Just one comment on that, Paul. That's my thought process behind appropriating it if we don't have a budget, because it seems pretty inevitable that we're going to get that 3%. But not knowing, I'm not willing to gamble that. So that's why I would appropriate it. And then we just wouldn't use that appropriation because we got the 3%.
The appropriation makes sense too, in that if sales tax come in strong, the interest rate you're talking about, that's just going to replenish that anyway at the end of the year. But I think that it's well thought out and well done. I just want to make that comment.
I just want to thank Mrs. George and everybody involved, because I'll echo what Mr. Flower said. And personally, this being my third go around at it, it has been extremely helpful to me and furthered my my knowledge of the process. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Okay, we are going to move on to item C, the capital facilities project.
Yeah, so we met with the architects in our regular meeting schedule, and things are moving along nicely. As Mrs. George mentioned, we started with the first phase of the project over the break, and they made some really great progress, in terms of repairing rooms and bathrooms, and in the, what side, the west part of the gym, west part
Well,
of
they
the
started
building.
that already?
Yeah, they started, yep, and so now they're working in the evening, they'll be working in the evenings until the summer. And so we're really hoping that they'll stay on track, and so far so good. It's gone very, very well. We're continuing to plan for the second phase, which will begin in the spring of next year. We continue those conversations at each of our meetings, and again, making nice progress, just kind of finishing up the details in regard to design and finishes and those types of things. The middle school drainage project is moving along very nicely, but today or yesterday, I received a message from Steve Sharowski, our lead architect, and as they were attempting to clean the existing manhole behind the building all the way to Fillmore, they realized that there was a significant blockage that needs to be repaired. And so they're going to be bringing us a quote. It looks like it's going to be around $16,000 to do that as part of the process. Not surprising. It was a very complicated process. I think the board knows it was about very close to $500,000 to repair the initial piping, and this is the first adjustment that we've made so far that I'm aware of. And so they're going to be sending us an actual quote to move that forward, but I wanted to bring that to the board's
This is
attention.
the old line that goes from the swimming pool area out to Fillmore, which was adequate for just that drainage, but now that you're putting in the roofs from the rest of the building, it's in.
And I think it was, like they said, it was a significant blockage that actually damaged their equipment as it was trying to push through. And so it definitely, the piece of that pipe definitely needs to be replaced.
So the drainage is not moving along.
Not really well.
nicely.
So I just wanted to share that with you. And also the project at Parkdale, it worked. So they replaced the asphalt on the side of Parkdale where drop off and pickup takes place each and every day. The space was in pretty rough shape. So the project came in really positive for the district. So we were able to completely replace all the asphalt, and including the parking areas, include striping.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They did the whole
thing, yes.
road.
Yeah, it came in under budget, and so
Amazing.
they were able to repair the whole
Yeah.
space, which is really good. Included the striping and also removable speed bumps. So we'll be using speed bumps in the spring and summer and fall, and removing them during the winter when plowing is happening. So it's a really a good upgrade for Parkdale, and so I know some parents were concerned about it. So we're glad
Does
that
that
that's
work? I mean, do they have speed bumps that you can take out that don't turn into potholes when you take them out?
Yes,
Yeah?
they do.
Oh, well, okay.
So we'll check them out.
And they have, so. Yeah, so we're moving along nicely. I guess that's about it. I don't know, any other questions?
Just a small clarification, because I know we have so many students here, and this is something that confused me before in the past. Just that as we were discussing budget, that it's understood that there's a difference between the capital projects that we're doing and the budget. Those are separate, because that becomes an area of confusion sometimes.
Yeah, the school district budget that we'll be voting on in May is separate from the facilities projects that we do. They're put up for a separate vote. And so this budget was, this vote for the facilities project was approved in December of, what was it? 22, December of 22. And so the project, we start planning before, we present it to the public, they vote, and then we continue the process over the next several years, because there's a lot of work that has to happen with the state to get approval. We work with vendors, obviously, to get bids, and we work through that entire process as well. So, but that is completely separate from the general budget that supports programming and.
You cannot commingle the funds. So if you say, oh, well, why don't we spend some of that money to keep the substitutes? It doesn't work that way. The approval was for a particular purpose. So when people voted for that, they voted for a particular purpose, and it has to be spent on that. And it is.
Yeah, it's super important.
But it's, what it does is it's a method of increasing state aid to our community. Because if we didn't have capital projects, those millions of dollars would not come into the community. And we would not have schools that were in the good condition that they're currently in. So it's, and I would also remind everyone that although there is an increase in taxes in this budget, that $1 of that increase it was approved in the vote for the capital project 2 years ago, and this is the first time that's been applied to the tax rate. So not $1, 1%.
1%.
Not a dollar for,
Yeah.
but 1% of the increase relates to the capital project. $1.
Thanks for mentioning that. That's important information.
It's okay, you could buy something for $1.
At this time, we'll let break a minute for our students who don't want to hang out and listen to the rest of the conversation.
Welcome to.
Thanks for visiting.
That's so nice of them. Kicked him out. Make a movement, make it You learned something?
Talk to Principal Roberts back up, Bill. Talk to him.
He's here now. Yeah. They made space for you.
Give Dr. Improda a minute. Dr. Improda a minute to return.
No, definitely, yeah.
I wouldn't mind stretching my legs.
We're in the home stretch.
It's a very early home stretch, I
I want that to be noted.
We'll try to drink something up.
I'm saying that we're gonna kind of, but maybe not.
We have did you ask, do we have everybody?
Well, yeah, and that was gonna be our next question, Brian answered. We may or may not have to do the budget piece because it's contingent on state aid.
Yeah, if we don't get any.
We want to do it outside of the board members.
As far as I recall,
Thank you.
I'm not sure I'll be there either. I'm gonna try. I told Mrs. Armbrust that I would try my best.
No problem. So much coffee. So, moving on to item 13, consensus items. Are there any requests to remove any specific items from the consensus agenda? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to B, is there a request to add any items to the consensus? Lovely, thank you. And we're straight on to C, which is do we have a motion to approve the consensus agenda? So moved. Moved by Mr. Blowers. Second by Dr. Improda. Is there any discussion?
I just had just to make sure that I understood before. When we talk about the new appointments, these are already in the budget. They're just now getting their official title, but they've been working as this particular person, this particular job for a while. Did I read that correctly? Yeah. Thank you.
No further discussion? Hearing none, I get a vote for all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And that is passed 5-0. We are all the way down to item number 18. Items requiring board action. Number 19A, the superintendent recommends the Board of Education performs a first.
17.
What?
We have to do 17 or not having some.
I have to do 17?
17. Wrong spot.
Part of consensus.
That was not part of consensus?
I'll change them. They're not marked as consensus.
Did we vote on the
On
consent?
my
Yes.
part.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
just a clerical error.
Since we didn't have it as,
You can vote separately on them. It's a clerical error. I put them as action instead of consensus.
Okay. So I thought that's what we addressed during the
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah, what did you say at the beginning?
Is that it was labeled, whatever, 13 through
Yeah, so
16,
it's a
but,
clerical error. It's just, they are in consensus. So I will just change them and have them voted on, or like, I'll change the clerical part because I have them marked as action. Because they're a financial action. So those are in consensus.
yeah, we'll read them
I'll fix
and vote on them individually too. We are on 17 financial, letter A. Can I get a motion to approve the shared continuing education program with Holland Central School District for the 2023-2024 school year as detailed in the attachment?
so moved.
Moved by Dr.
Second.
Improda. Seconded by Mr. Blowers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that's passed 5-0. We're on to B. I get a motion to approve the rate for health and welfare services for East Aurora students attending private and parochial schools in the Kenmore Town of Tonawanda Union 3 School District, as detailed in the agenda and attachments.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Danu. Second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Improda. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And that is passed 5-0. We're on to item C. Can I get a motion to approve the health and the rate? Can I get a motion to approve the rate for health and welfare services for East Aurora students attending private and parochial schools in the Amherst Central School District as detailed in the agenda and attachments?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Danu. Second?
Second.
Dr. Improda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that is also passed 5-0. Thank you so much. We are moving on to items requiring board action. Item number 19, A. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education perform a first reading to adopt the policy named EA 1040.05, absentee and military ballots. May I have a motion?
So moved.
By Mrs. Danu. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Blowers. Any discussion?
Is that the title? I thought it was absentee early in military balance, or am I wrong?
Is that the
It's being changed.
new title?
You should be, yes, so it'll be changed from absentee and military to absentee early in military because of the new New York State rules on early voting.
Okay, so what's written here is the old title. Gotcha. No, all right, it says
No,
added
yeah.
to include early, okay.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Got it, thank you.
And to your point, these are changes that are required based on the changes the state.
In response to the changes of the state, yes.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's 5-0. We are on to number 20, financial. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve. Where did it go? Awarding the commissioning contract to M/E Engineering PC. Need a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Danию.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sampson. Any discussion?
I had to look it up on Google to find out what commission it meant. Now I know.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That's passed 5-0. We're on to item B. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve awarding the following Phase 1 Special Instructions contract to CME Associates Incorporated as detailed in the attachments. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Danию,
Second?
seconded by Dr. Improda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that is passed 5-0. We are on to item C. Can I get a motion to approve the following textbook philosophy as recommended by the textbook committee?
Psychology.
Yeah, psychology.
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Improda,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Danию, Dr. Improda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that's passed 5-0. We are on to textbook number 2, The Real World, An Introduction to Sociology. Can I get a motion to approve that textbook as recommended by the textbook committee? Fine, stepping on my lines, that's fine. The motion was made by Dr. Improda. May I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Danию, any discussion?
I feel like I already discussed those ones.
Yeah, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that is passed 5-0. We are on to number 21. Can I get a motion, or the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the sports merger with the Holland Central School District for the 24-25 school year as detailed in the agenda and the contract executed by the superintendent. May I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Danию,
Second?
seconded by Dr. Improda. Any discussion?
Are there any new ones here, or are these the same as this?
Same.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And my only comment is, I remember years ago when we first started this and did the combination with Holland, and it's really to give the student athletes these opportunities that they might not have without the combination. It's something that really, we look at this list now, and there are just so many different programs that are benefiting from this, and our athletes and our students.
And we should continue to look for ways that we can cooperate with the neighboring districts on a variety of things. The continuing education program that we approved just prior to this was one example of that, and there may be others.
Conducting professional development together with Holland.
Well, that's good.
Started off the school year this year, started off the school year last year.
And it also, just as we're talking about the budget, this also helps in terms of the overall budget, to be able to combine and work with another district. It also gives us some efficiency. Weren't they doing that when you combined with another district? Saving, there was a big push years ago.
Oh, there is
Yeah.
still on the books.
Right.
You share some of the cost no matter what.
Everybody gets a big tax increase,
Tax decrease.
It's like $1. Yes, you get a big tax decrease if you merge with the neighboring district, but it's a very cumbersome process.
But
I'll say another benefit that I've noticed as a parent, is especially when we merged for indoor track, was have our athletes participating with the Holland athletes who they just been competing against in cross country, and then started competing against outdoor. It made the dynamic really, really interesting and a lot of fun. And I know that there have been some friendships that have been fostered through that. So that's a benefit that I personally wish.
Sure. Well, you see it in professional sports. You have athletes in baseball who are competing against someone that a week ago they were on their team, and they shift around and they're good friends in many cases. So competition doesn't mean a lack of friendship, and it often involves building relationships that last a lifetime.
Absolutely. Well, and I'd love to drag this out so that Mrs. Armbrust doesn't feel like I rushed us through this, but get a vote for all who approve. All oppose, abstentions, and that is passed 5-0. And we are on to number 22, new business. Is there any new business for the board that anyone would like to add for an upcoming agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to number 23, the items of information, upcoming meetings, workshop. Our next regular scheduled meeting is the 10th, but we do have a special meeting that will be held the 16th, the morning of, here at the middle school, yes, at 8:30 a.m. Yes. Right, and that is on the table on the next page. Great. Great. So we have no need for an additional executive session as far as I know. So can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mrs. Danty. Second by Mr. Flowers. Any discussion for like an hour? No, hearing none. All opposed, abstentions. And that is passed 5-0. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Great job.
Yes.